Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures podcast. I'm Tom. As always, I'm with my gorgeous, wonderful superhero of a wife and co-host, Michelle.
You're so sweet. Hi, everybody.
So good to have you with us. We are recording this episode on Sunday, February 7th, 2021. Again, we have done a lot of work here on Sunday, February 7th, 2021. This episode is actually going to be dropping on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. That's because we're on vacation.
Yay!
If you didn't know already, if you didn't listen to the last few episodes, we are out at the Walt Disney World Resort. When you hear this, we may be back already.
Right.
This day when this episode is dropping is the day we are returning.
Mm-hmm.
We are flying back late in the afternoon that day, so we may already be back.
Yeah. I wish we could say how fun it was, but we know it will be.
We will. We will. We will be talking all about it. Trust me on that.
Right.
So as for today, we appreciate that you joined us today. In the future, you can find us most everywhere you get podcasts. However, the very best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventurespodcast.com. And while you're there,
You will have an opportunity to sign up for our newsletter.
please sign up for the newsletter. We will be back on schedule with the newsletter, I think, this week. It's just another way to kind of be involved in the Hyperion Adventures podcast world, get the first chance to see some of the information of what we have going on, and your first chance to give us some input on some of our topics.
And thank you to those of you who have already signed up. I'm just so happy that you have done that, and you do a great job. Baby.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're always amazed by people who, one, listen to the show, but then who have subscribed for the newsletter and ever. When we first started this thing, I didn't know if we'd have 5 people that listen to us. And it's
Right.
always amazing to me when we
Got
have
up to 6.
news. When we got to 7 was amazing. It's lucky 7. It was so good. So thank you all very much. You can also follow us on social media. We have a lot of fun out on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you've been following along on our vacation on social media. We're on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We do have a YouTube channel. I know some of these videos have been a little delayed, but they will be starting to come back out as of this week once we get back from our vacation.
Right.
If you want to find us there, just do a search for Hyperion Adventures Podcast, hit subscribe, and you'll know whenever we have a new video. And if you ever want to contact us for any reason, please hit us up at our Gmail account, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
Right. You can contact us for, anything. But if you have some feedback on some of our episodes and things that we could do to make it better, we sure love to hear from you.
Right. We just love to be more in contact with you in any way possible.
Right.
And whether it be social media, whether it be email, whatever it may be, we just appreciate, getting the input from you one way or the other. Now, as for today's show, as we discussed last week, if you listened to last week's show, we're on vacation. We recorded this 2 weeks earlier. So we don't really have any Disney stories of the week this week because who knows what's happened over the past couple of weeks.
I'll have a little announcement at the end.
Michelle always has an announcement, which is
Little.
always fun. So we'll look forward to that.
Very
But
little.
we don't really have any Disney stories of the week. However, we will have a tip for you. We do that every single show. We try and have you a brand new tip or maybe a recycled tip. You never know, but it's something that might help you on your next vacation. But we will have some interesting stuff for you. And of course, we have our main topic of the week. Let's get to it right now. So yes, with WandaVision starting to move along, we're getting near the wrap up of this season of WandaVision, which has been phenomenal so far.
Right.
We really enjoyed it. We thought, this is the first building block to the beginning of the, Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4. And we kind of thought, well, before we start moving too far into Phase 4, maybe we'd like to look back at some of the stuff that we've seen in the first 3 phases and some of our favorite moments from these Marvel movies that we have loved so much.
Yeah, there's been some really marvelous ones.
Oh, you see what she did there? You see what she did there? Michelle always has the best alliteration there. So yeah, very good. So let's get right to it. We always, whenever we do one of these lists, we always start with Michelle. One, because she's just a superhero. She is strong in a little tiny red-headed package. But she also has the very best tips. She has the best announcements. And of course, she has the very best list. So let's get right to it. Here is Michelle's number 5 favorite Marvel movie moment.
Okay, so my number 5, and you'll find from my list there's a blend of some comedy and some more serious or heartwarming ones. I think I could have done a list on either of those, right? A list of 5 funny ones.
Easily. There's so many great moments.
Right, a list of 5. And
we may do that. We may just go to comedy moments at some point.
But the first one is more comedy, and it's in Thor Ragnarok. And it's when Thor first gets into the arena and he finds out that he's, going to fight
you're talking about.
Against the Hulk. And, that very iconic, yes, we know each other from work.
He's a friend from work. Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I love that scene. It's so quirky with Thor when you think of how Thor is, and he's a god, and of royalty and things like that, and for him to say something like that, it's just so funny.
It's one of the things I love about. I think that they finally, Thor, the original Thor movie was okay. Dark World, I love Loki in Dark World.
That's true.
He's really good in the Dark World. But Ragnarok, I think they, when Taika Waititi put that one together, he grasped what's funny about Thor is that he kind of takes himself so seriously. So they made it a comedy thing about him taking himself so seriously, and just had, they brought Jeff Goldblum in, who is always great,
Perfect.
and it was just fun. The whole idea was fun, yet it would move the story along that we needed to do within phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe at the same time. And that is a great line within it, and a great moment within it, for sure.
Thank you.
So
what about your number 5?
Always the best 5. By the way, for my list, I decided that my whole 5 could have been from Avengers Endgame, because there's so many great moments from Avengers Endgame. I decided I'd limit myself to just one moment from Avengers Endgame.
Wow.
Here. So just to make sure I could kind of go spread evenly about some other films.
Right.
Here. So,
I kind of was with one of the other films. So I know what you mean.
So just know that going in, I may mention more of them within my honorable mentions, but as far as my list, I decided I was just going to limit myself to one from that film. So as far as my number 5, it's actually a multiple. It's a 5A, B, C.
Wow.
But it all comes from the same film franchise. And it's every time Luis recounts a story in the 2 Ant-Man films, because you just wait for them, because they are gold.
Oh, I know.
Every single time. They're hilarious. The extra information he throws in around, talking about wine. And,
I know.
It's like from
him?
Yeah, you don't expect him to really know the nuances of different wines. It's so funny.
And art.
Yeah. But they're all pertinent. They're all pertinent to the story. They're somewhere within this wide array of things that he goes off on tangents on, kind of like our show in many other regards, is something that's really important to what's moving the plot line along. They're a riot every time. The way the actors portray them as he's, the way he's talking about them are great. It's like, this is a very adult thing and not very Disney, but if you've ever watched Drunk History and how they take people and they get them drunk and then they have them recount history.
Exactly.
It's kind of like that, the way they have the actors portray them. We love that show. We love this. It's so good. And it's actually inspired me that I really want to see him, Olaf, and C-3PO have a Disney Plus show where they take turns retelling classic Disney stories. Because in their films, at some point, they've all done that. And it's been brilliant.
True.
I would love to see this.
That's a great one. And it's funny that you put that as your number 5. I had it on my list as my number 5 and ended up putting it to honorable mention. In the same way, as you said, A, B, and C, because they were golden. Yeah,
they're all great. As soon as you see he's going into a story, you're just like, oh boy, here we go. This is going to be fun. What's he going to say? So good. I love it so much. So that's my number 5. Let's get to Michelle's number 4 favorite Marvel movie moment.
All right. Well, my number 4 actually comes to something you and I've been talking offline about with WandaVision and everything, and how Hawkeye had an important role with her. And I think that scene where he's really finally talking to her, and saying, here's your chance to become an Avenger. I thought that was, one very pivotal. But it's just very touching, how the two of them, interact with each other. I mean, we're used to seeing him interact more with Natasha. And now, he's having this important moment with Wanda. And I felt like it was, it had a little lightness to it in the scene, but it was just so heartwarming.
Yeah, it's it's very, one of the things from Hawkeye, and I think we get from Age of Ultron, you really get to know him better. I mean, unfortunately, within the first Avengers movie, which is a great film, because he gets his mind warped by Loki early on, you don't get to really know him as he is, but he really shines a lot in Age of Ultron. And part of his, passing along this fatherly / brotherly, whatever you want to call him, his knowledge, his influence on Wanda, who, was an adversary early on in that film for him, but say, look, it's up to you, at this point, you walk through that door, you're an Avenger, and he had some, as we mentioned in the past or discussed a little bit, he's had some key moments in her life where he's come and been involved with it. So who knows, at this point, he has not, as far as we know, has not shown up in WandaVision. It wouldn't shock me if he does.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe we're saying this and you're listening to this and you're like, he's already been there. Where you been? But, just remember, we're recording this on February 7th. So at this point, he hasn't been involved in it. But it wouldn't shock me if he did pop up somewhere in the show. So very nice. Good choice.
Thank you.
I like that very much.
Your number 4.
My number 4 comes from Captain America, the First Avenger. And that is when Captain America emerges from pretty much single-handedly saving the whole most of the 107th Infantry after being held as POWs from Hydra. Before that point, he'd been kind of like, oh, we're pushing you aside. Yeah, you've been given the super soldier serum, but, you're pretty much going to be a choir boy. You're going to sing and dance, trying to get war bonds, which actually is an interesting thing because it's part of what Captain America was developed for, was to get war bonds and used very often. So it's kind of an interesting part of that movie. But that's the point. He goes in behind enemy lines by himself, takes down this elite Hydra unit for the most part, ends up walking back. They emerge walking into camp, trailed by what they would become later known as the Howling Commandos. That's his group that he would lead throughout the rest of this film. And just his walking in with them trailing behind him, that moment right there signifying he is the hero. He's always been at heart, but now can personify with his new body and everything else that was given to him with the super soldier serum. And, and it was that hero moment, the first big hero moment for Captain America.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That is a great scene. And I love how they filmed it almost like the very iconic heroic, troop coming back from winning a battle or something like that. And it just had that look and feel to it, and I thought they did a great job with it. And like you said, it, kind of turned a corner for Captain America and what his involvement would be.
Right. And the music is kind of almost that, it's not quite a fife and drum, but it's more modern, like fife and drum kind of like thing of them. Here come the heroes walking back from this battle. It's just a huge moment and a big start, like I said, for Captain America. So that's my number 4. Let's get to Michelle's number 3 favorite iconic Marvel movie moment.
All right. So my number 3 was actually from the Black Panther. And really, first of all, that movie to me was amazing. It's really spectacular. It's spectacular. It's my favorite Marvel film. I felt that how they brought women to the forefront of being strong, independent, smart, having a role to play that contributes was a thread throughout the entire film. And so I really, found it hard to come up with one specific scene, but because we do that, I had to. and actually, it was the scene with his sister, Shuri, and that when she was showing him the equipment that she set up for him, which was kind of funny, like a James Bond kind of thing. Here, let me give you a rundown of all the little
like she's
gadgets, right? But the fact that it had levity, it had that family connection, and even though and there's so many things out there about royals and their interactions with family, this showed such a solid relationship the two of them had,
just even cracking on one another, just brother and sister,
and
even though he's king and she's a princess,
right, and yet he saw the value that she had. He recognized her intelligence. He didn't try to be the one that is always on top, and in control. That it's something that he does take input and feedback from other people around him. And I just thought that was really a cute scene. But like I said, there were so many in there, and so I put some more in my honorable mentions.
I love when she cracks on his sandals. He's like, what are those?
I know, it's so funny.
So good. So
anyways,
that's a great choice. I like it.
Thank you. Your number 3.
My number 3 comes from Captain America: Civil War, and that is that moment when we finally, after several movies, get to see Spider-Man introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Disney version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because going into that, look, Spider-Man basically saved Marvel, started Marvel. Marvel and the Avengers and everything there's so much of Spider-Man entrenched within him. And the fact that he was owned by another studio, essentially owned by Sony, and could not appear in many of these films while these were great, there always seemed to be that little bit of a hole. So finally getting to see him make his first appearance in there. And it's a great scene. We got Tony Stark as Iron Man saying, Underoos! And he comes flying in, steals Cap's shield, lands up there, and it's such a dramatic, yet funny and scene, and he's just a fanboy at the same time, so it's just this fantastic scene, and I love it very much. And again, it was such a huge, important part of what Marvel was missing to that moment. So it was just, yay, there's Spider-Man finally. And so that's why it had to be high on my list, because I think that was a big thing that needed to happen for the Marvel Cinematic Universe within the first 3 phases. Right.
Most definitely. And like you said, it was a great way to introduce him into the mix in there. And even his lines during that battle were just so, great, as what you would expect somebody, of the age he was portraying, being a teenager, and some of the things and how he interpreted people. But, and like, oh, I'm gonna tie you up now, but hey, I really like you. You're amazing. And it was just great.
Remember that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back? So good.
I know.
Anyway, it's great. I love Tom Holland. I love him as Spider-Man. I'm looking forward to Spider-Man 3 coming out here soon in the next year or so. Very exciting stuff. So I'm glad he's part of the Marvel. Spider-Man needs to be part, because Marvel wouldn't be Marvel without Spider-Man. It may not exist without Spider-Man.
Right.
There he is. Yeah. So I was glad that they were able to work things out again to make sure that Spider-Man can be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Exactly.
So that's my number 3. Let's get to Michelle's number 2 favorite Marvel movie moment.
All right. So as I'm looking at my list, I realized I gave my number 2 as my number 3.
Oh. So reverse it.
I do think Black Panther is higher up on there. Okay. So I'm going to give you my number 3 now, and just remember the Black Panther was number 2. From Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And that's the film that I could have come up with 5 easily. But in this particular scene, when Yondu was telling Peter that I may not have been your actual father, but I was your daddy. That is just so amazingly precious, heartfelt. And, when he did it and how he did it, you just like, that's a foregone conclusion at that point. It was really so evident throughout both of the films, but it just kind of built up to where you realized, yes. And, and Peter also had a love of Yondu, even though there was this conflict. I mean, who doesn't have conflicts with their parents, right? So, it just, again, I think lot of things when we're doing lists. I love the family interactions, and this wasn't your traditional family, but it definitely had elements of a traditional family relationship in it. So
very good. Yeah, I agree with you. There's some great moments in there. That movie's all about family, and that family doesn't necessarily need to come from who you're born with. It's the relationships you make along the way that can be your family. And we find you Hyperion Adventurers as part of our family. Many of the people that we interact with in social media, part of our Disney family, our Hyperion Adventurers family.
Right.
We love all of you as different portions of our family as well. So great choice for your number 3. Now remember, switch that with Black Panther for your number 2.
Because Black Panther was higher up than that. Yeah.
Very good. So
so now we're at your number 2.
My number 2. My number 2 comes from the original Avengers film, and that is that moment where the Avengers assemble. Now it's not said Avengers assemble at that moment, but it is that point where you kind of get that spinning around camera shot where they're fighting off all the invaders that have come in, and you see them all together fighting together for the first time now, because this was a relatively historic movie moment at that point. I mean, first off, just in that film in general, they were having trouble connecting together. They were so used to doing their own thing, not really working as a team. And there's so many egos there. They are all superheroes, that they were conflicting in many ways. For them to be able to pull together at that moment was such a big deal.
Sure.
But then also, I mean, this was something that they were shooting for in Marvel, and something that really hasn't been done much out there, at least not within films. And that is to get all these huge heroes together in one big scene, and that was that moment when they're together and they're and you see them together, and it's shot so well with the camera spinning around them, and they're all doing their own thing, and it's just such a cool scene. And it is the Avengers Assemble thing that, if you know the Avengers from the comic books or whatever, it was that moment you were waiting for. So cool.
Yeah, that's a great choice, and totally agree with you. It really was, like you said, how it was shot was pretty spectacular, but it was also very meaningful at that time.
Right. So that's my number 2. Let's get to the real number 1, though. What is Michelle's number 1 favorite Marvel movie moment?
I have a 1A and B.
Okay. Real ones.
Yes. But also, again, both from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So the first one I'll talk about, my 1A, is when Yondu gets his replacement headpiece back and is able to regain access of the ship that was taken over. And, just how they filmed that scene, I thought was really spectacular. One, I mean, you were like cheering for him. But in addition to that, the music, was it Come a Little Bit Closer?
Right.
And it's just that they wanted to have something that Peter's music style was in there. But it also, I mean, in watching it is a gory scene, but they don't show it in a gory way. He is getting rid of all these people that took over his ship, but it's done in a way, it's kind of like Alfred Hitchcock. You didn't have to see the gore to know it was gory. And I thought they did that in a great way. I mean, a few shots, you see a little bit more than others, but I just thought it was great. I loved how they had Baby Groot looking all mean, and he's going to be tough too, and it was just, it had cuteness to it. It had, that yay, he finally got the ship back and everything, and the music, it was just so well produced. I
mean, the music is perfect for it, because the calm that he's showcasing as he's just sitting there and whipping that arrow around through everything, and everything's in slow motion. It's shot really well. The cinematography and the way they did it, and people falling in different ways and everything, and meanwhile the arrow was whizzing by in all sorts of different directions. It's really well done. And Baby Groot getting some redemption from the ones who made fun of him or gave him a hard time.
Exactly.
Really, it is a great scene, and definitely an interesting scene for sure. What's your 1B?
Okay, my 1B from the same movie is the Ravenger's funeral scene. And I won't give it away in case you've never seen it in terms of whose funeral, but that was such I mean, it had the dichotomy of it, you were happy that the recognition was finally achieved but obviously sad for the parting of somebody that you really love in the film. But I thought it had all the elements. I loved how they captured everybody's response to it. It was just a heartwarming scene.
Yep. Agreed.
Tearjerker.
Really? It is a tearjerker. There's a few in that movie.
Yeah.
So. Funny you say Black Panther is your favorite Marvel movie, but you have 3
I know.
elements from this movie, so maybe it's not. Maybe they're 1A and 1B. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, I think Black Panther for me, in terms of a standalone film that has so many great elements of it, maybe not individual scenes,
Right.
but the whole
I say that the movie as a whole. That's
movie
why you
as a
had
whole,
more
right?
trouble pinpointing an actual scene in
Right.
that one because you love the movie as a whole, whereas you were able to pinpoint specific moments.
Right,
within
exactly,
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume
exactly.
2.
It's
Right.
more the message that it produced and the interaction of people versus particular scenes. I mean, like, the casino scene was great. And that was on my honorable mention. And the car chase scene, also very great.
That is really cool.
But I mean, in terms of saying best Marvel individual scenes, no. But as a movie as a whole, I thought that was Black Panther was the best.
Great. Well,
So,
great list.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
And so now we're up to your number one.
My number one, well, as I mentioned already, and since you know that I was going to limit myself to one from Avengers
Right.
Endgame, that's what I did, and that is my number one. And this was tough. I had 3 or 4 different things that I could have put into this number one spot. I decided not to make it a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. I figured I'd save some of those for honorable mentions. My number one, and it fluctuated. I had it at one thing at one point, another thing at another point. I finally settled on this because I thought it was the key moment was the on your left. At the end of Avengers Endgame. And if you've seen that film, you know what I'm talking about. Again, these will be spoilers here for if you had never watched Avengers Endgame, you're one of the few people who hasn't at this point. But if you haven't seen it, it's the moment in all looks lost. I mean, you have Captain America there, Steve Rogers, and he's beaten to almost a bloody pulp right at that point by Thanos. He's there, and he's ready to, he's not going to give in. He is like, okay, I can do this all day. I'm beaten up. I'm spitting blood. I'm a mess. He's getting ready to go in for one last time, knowing it's probably a futile effort.
Right.
He straps on that, even though his arm is messed up, the shield on, he tightens that strap. It's only a half a shield at that point, ready to go. And he's getting ready to go in, and you just know that that's going to be the end. And then suddenly you hear a on your left.
Right.
And sorry. And it all starts to happen. The portals start to open up, and Sam flies through, they're led by King T'Challa and the Black Panther group, which is, especially looking back on it now, knowing what happened to Chadwick Boseman and everything in the last several months, how important that is and everything. And it's just that moment of the cavalry arrives. And, after having all those, we knew when Infinity War ended that these characters were, they got dusted by the snap, that they're probably coming back, but it still felt something emotional when they all reemerge at that moment, and they all come out through those portals and okay, it's on, we're back in this thing. And it's such a big moment and it's so huge. And again, it's an amazing scene. Right.
Well, isn't that also like a take on Captain America when he was running in DC?
Yes.
And that's what he said.
Yeah, it's back from the Winter Soldier. That's where they first met, was they're running around the reflecting pool there by the monuments at the National Mall. And he keeps passing Sam. That's how they met. He keeps going on your left. Sam, where is this guy coming from? And then they become really good friends. Yeah. Obviously, best of friends in many regards. So. But yeah, that's why that on your left is also significant because of that. But it's just to see them all reemerge from those portals was just such a amazing moment.
Yes.
I wept, and it was just a beautiful scene.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It was amazing, and it was just. It was needed at that point for sure. It was really grim.
I mean, I know that again, obviously we knew this was probably going to happen.
Right.
You know, it wasn't going to be another thing where they lose again.
Right.
But we didn't know. Hey, we heard that Cap might die.
Right.
You know, and we didn't know that was going to be it. We didn't know how this was going to happen.
Right.
And it still was just it was amazing the way they did it. They built the drama up perfectly and paid off on it in that scene.
Exactly.
So that's my 5 favorite. That's your 5 favorite Marvel movie moments. Do you have any honorable mentions as well?
Well, I think I already kind of mentioned a couple of them from Black Panther, and the other one that I had it on my list. I wanted it, but again, I already had several from Guardians of the Galaxy too. But when he was, kind of flying and Peter says, "You look like Mary Poppins," and he thought that was some kind of like a superhero kind. He goes, "Hey, look, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all."
Yeah, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
And I thought that was great. Yeah. That was such a cute one.
You look like Mary Poppins. Is he cool? Yeah. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Well, especially since Peter had always had that he thought his father was David Hasselhoff. So I think Yondu probably thought, oh, if he's saying I look like somebody, it must be somebody cool,
Right. There we go. Good stuff. So,
hey, what about you?
Like I said, I have a few just from Avengers Endgame. And the one that was 1B, could have been 1B if I wanted to not limit it to one, or it was my number one for a little bit of while, is right after that scene I just talked about, the On Your Left scene, which is when they're all show up there. They're all there. And then you see them all gearing up for the battle, and Cap's there, and he reaches and he gets Thor's hammer, and he's Avengers.
Right.
Assemble. You were so waiting for it. I was so excited to hear that Avengers Assemble, because even though we had that Avengers Assemble moment in the first film that I talked about, that was my number 2, we hadn't heard Cap say Avengers Assemble.
Right.
And that is such a big slogan for that. It's such a big rallying point for the Avengers, for that to happen in that moment with everyone there when emotions are at their highest. It was a yes. So it really could have been. To ask me tomorrow, that I could have flip flopped them, and if I was going to only name one, that would have been my number 1. But they're 1A, 1B.
Right.
Of course, Tony. Again, these are all spoilers for Avengers Endgame. I'm sorry, but when he steals the stone, and Thanos says, "I am inevitable," snaps, and he realizes that Tony actually has all the stones. He says, "I am Iron Man," and does the snap and wipes them out and finishes him off. Another amazing moment within that movie, and so. And knowing that Tony was sacrificing himself at that point, when it was been talked since the very first Avengers film, Cap saying, "You're not the guy who would throw yourself on the grenade to save everybody else," and basically that's what he just did. It showed Tony's development at that point, into that he basically jumped on the grenade to save everybody. Yeah. So that was amazing. Tony's funeral afterwards, but especially the end of his funeral, where it's just happy, his friend and security guy and driver talking with Tony's daughter, and just that sweet little moment there with her. And, the line about, we're going to get you all the hamburgers, it's just so touching and such a wonderful, sweet little moment. And finally, another sweet moment that made me cry again at the end of the film, when Steve goes back in time and reunites with Peggy Carter, and they finally have that dance that they've been waiting on since he flies the jet into Greenland, back in the first Captain America film. So that's it for those. I mean, I have many more I could take from that film, but that's it. A couple others from other films I want to talk about is Hulk meeting up with Loki up in Stark Tower, and I am a god. And he just goes, slams them all over the place. Puny god. Such a good moment.
That is a good one.
That's a really good one. And then I think you've mentioned some other ones. There's some of my, Mary Poppins y'all is a fantastic one as well. So great moments. We'd love to know what some of your favorite Marvel moments have been. Please share them with us, and we will actually share them on the next show if you hit us up, because we'll be back doing shows that we're not recording 2 weeks earlier at that point.
Yeah, definitely. I love your list too.
Thanks. I love your list too. So many great Marvel moments. There's so many to share. We could go on all day about them, but we had to cut these off some point. Even though our lists are always long, we needed to come off. But those are our 5-ish favorite Marvel movie moments. Again, so many great Marvel
Yes.
moments. We love that film franchise so much, and we can't wait to see where they go in the future here into Phase 4 and beyond, and see what they do with this whole series. So lots of stuff that's in play here that I'm excited about.
Yeah, awesome.
So as we said, this is going to be a bit of a different episode because we're recording this 2 weeks early. We don't have any Disney stories of the week. However, I guess Michelle has some sort of announcement, and we know Michelle has the best announcement. So Michelle, what is your announcement you want to share with everybody?
Well, my announcement is coming up this week when you're listening to it. Well, if you're listening to it the week that we're posting it on February 26th. Disney Plus will be having a few celebrations that will be aired. One of them will be the Disney Illuminations fireworks show from Disneyland Paris, which I was wishing it would be Candlebration for the 15th anniversary that we saw.
Sometime when we do our Disneyland Paris episode, we need to tell the Candlebration story.
That's funny, that is funny. And also the Shanghai Disney Resort Grand Opening Gala. So I think those are two interesting things to watch for. They were featured on the Disney Magic Moments on the Disney Parks blog site, but I think seeing them on the Disney Plus streaming,
might be a little easier.
Right,
thumb up when
easier,
you need to,
yeah. And who knows, they might add a little bit to it. But anyways, I thought that would be interesting to remind everybody that's coming up this week.
Right, that's nice. So kind of going back into time and seeing some great moments in Disney history and some great shows and obviously a fireworks spectacular and some that you may not have been able to. How many people have been able to get to Disneyland Paris from here in the United States? How many of even probably fewer from the United States have gotten to Shanghai. Disneyland? So that's great. Good stuff.
All right. Well, thank you.
So again, Michelle's announcements, always great. We like to always, of course, even when we're on vacation, we still leave, even though we have no Disney stories, we do leave you with some sort of tip. And we always start with Michelle, one, because she's wonderful, fantastic, a little tiny superhero. She's not quite Ant-Man, but she is little tiny, but she's wonderful, packs a wallop, and she always has the very best tip. So let's get right to it. Here is Michelle's tip of the week.
Well, mine's more of an Ant-Man sized tip for this week. And that relates to if you are somebody who is traveling with somebody, or you are somebody who has some special needs and you want to take advantage of the opportunity Disney offers with their DAS services, which is Disability Access Services. You know that what you do is you go to the front of the theme park that you're entering and you talk to somebody there at guest services, and they can customize what kind of features that they can help provide you to make your trip the best it can be. And I know we've done an episode in the past where I've kind of delved into that a little bit more in detail, but my little tip is something that I actually just found out recently is they also have a guest services at the International Gateway entrance of Epcot. And so if you're entering Epcot from that area, so whether you're taking the gondolas or you're coming from the Yacht and Beach Club area or the Boardwalk area, you don't have to go to the front of Epcot if you want to access guest services for that, get some assistance with DOS. You can do that right there at International Gateway.
Very good. That is a very good tip. Michelle's tip. And maybe an Ant-Man sized tip. That was a giant man sized tip.
Oh, please.
Wait. That's just an Ant-Man sized tip and a giant man sized tip. An Ant-Man sized tip that ends up being a giant man sized tip. How's that? We'll try that.
There you go. Ta-da!
Boy, thank goodness we're on vacation because I obviously need it. Anyway, my tip, since we're talking about Marvel, I'm going to continue to talk about Marvel here. And my tip is another little tip, and it's probably actually pretty obvious thing, and that is if you've been watching WandaVision and you've been enjoying it, and who knows where we are. Again, we haven't been able on the air in 2 weeks, so we don't know what's actually happened.
Up to episode 5.
Right, was the last one we saw before we recorded this episode. We've watched probably the other episodes by now, but we have not been able to discuss them as of this point when we were recording this. But I kind of wanted to go back and, whether you're new to getting involved with Marvel or whether you've been there all along and haven't revisited some of the films that we're discussing here, some things that you may want to look back on as far as relating to WandaVision right now and relating to what we believe. And again, we don't know. Only the people in Marvel, Kevin Feige and all them, know what's to come really. But what we can kind of see as some things that are leading into what phase 4 and beyond may begin to look like. And so, obviously the best thing you can do is just watch all the Marvel movies, because there are, some are maybe a little bit not as good as some other ones, but they're all pretty good films in general. And they all lend a part into what you will see throughout the series. But if you're only going to pick a few to go forward or revisit at this point, here's what I would personally suggest going forward, going through WandaVision, going into what I believe we're going to be leading to in the future. Of course, Avengers Age of Ultron is the first time we meet Wanda and her brother in that one. And that's a key. And we talked about some of that movie there with Hawkeye and what he goes through there. Captain America's Civil War is another key one in Wanda's development as well, and what's going forward. Ant-Man and the Wasp, we have a new Ant-Man and the Wasp movie coming out in the future and part of phase 4. That's going to be important as well. And there's some key things that happen within that movie that I think are going to play into what we have coming forward. Doctor Strange as well. I think I skipped over him. Doctor Strange, another movie coming out. What he is doing is going to be a part of this as well. Captain Marvel is definitely a huge part of what we have going forward. Go back, watch Captain Marvel. Very important stuff that's going to be coming out in the future, involved with where we saw the origin story of Captain Marvel. Of course, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. Just watch them because they're great films. Both of them together are great movies. Watch them, but there's some stuff that is at play there. Something that's not on Disney Plus right now, but if you can find it out there, Spider-Man Far From Home, especially there's an credits scene at the end that is really important. I have a feeling to what we're going to see in the near future. You should watch the entire movie because it's good. But there is a scene that's going to, again, it's just, a lot of these end credit scenes are just little teases as to what you'll see, but there's a very important tease in there. And also, judging that we're watching this after coming from episode 5, and maybe some other things that have come out since then. So please bear with us if there have. You want to go back, and even though this wasn't originally part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it is now in play. It is on Disney Plus. It is part of the Disney umbrella now, and that is a couple of the X-Men movies, X-Men Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. Days of Future Past, a better movie. Apocalypse, not really a great movie. But there are some key scenes dealing with a character that has just made an emergence there that you may want to check out. And they're actually some of the better scenes in the movie. You might want to see those too. So just a few that kind of might help you understand what's going on and help you moving forward. And of course, there's all sorts of stuff online. If you want to look up some of the interesting things that are Easter eggs and whatever, they're all out there. Go find them, because there really is some cool depth to what's happening within the Marvel Cinematic Universe and WandaVision in particular. Right.
No, that's a great list of things to help tie some of the things together and give you a better history, especially if you haven't watched any of those in the past. Those would really give you, some foundation. Right.
Or just refresh your memory on a few things that have happened in the past and that they're alluding to throughout these and where we are going forward. So that's it for this week. Next week, well, we are, like we mentioned before, back from vacation, and we'll be excited to share a lot of the details of that journey with you. Now, I promise you we're not going to go day by day, hour by hour, what we did, but we are going to hit a lot of the highlights and explain, what we went through, what it's like out there for us, what we experienced, and especially we'll be excited to talk about it because, as I mentioned earlier, it'll have been nearly a year since we visited a Disney park, and so we're going to have a lot to talk about. So that's going to be fun.
Yes, it will be.
Very excited for that. So as for today, we appreciate that you joined us today. In the future, you can find us most everywhere you get podcasts. However, the very best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. And while you're there,
you will have an opportunity to sign up for the newsletter.
Please sign up for the newsletter. It's going to be coming out more in a regular form, just as we have it week in and week out before this, begin on this week. But it's just a way to kind of be more involved in the Hyperion Adventures podcast world. Another way is to follow us on social media. We have a lot of fun on social media with a lot of you out there. Please find us on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We do have a YouTube channel, and a lot of these episodes that we're recording today will eventually start making it out this week. There may be a flood of videos coming out this week from prior episodes. If you want to find us there, just do a search for Hyperion Adventures Podcast, hit subscribe, and you'll know whenever those new videos come out. And if you ever want to connect with us for any reason, please hit us up at our Gmail account, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
We love hearing from you, and we'll love it even more if you could tell a friend about our podcast.
Yes. Please tell your friends. That's the easiest way for people to find out about our show. That's it for today. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures podcast. We look forward to sharing some time with you again next week. Until that time, I'm Tom.
I'm Michelle.
And we hope that you have a magical week.